Welcome, impactful parents. Today, we're going to be talking about co parents that drive us crazy. And we're going to be talking about the unfairness, the bickering, and how your ex is always trying to get one up on you. Hello, my name is Christina Campos. I'm founder of the Impactful Parent, and I help parents of school age children to turn their chaos into connection with their adolescent. I'm a mom of 4 kids, a teacher that's taught every grade from preschool through high school. And today I help moms and dads like yourself to navigate that exhausting, confusing, frustrating, but rewarding world of parenting. So, welcome to the Impactful Parent. And today I have my co host with me, Rodrigo Bravo. Rodrigo is a co parenting mediator out of the state of Texas. He is a parenting coach. And most importantly, he is a dad of 2 boys. Rodrigo brings a dad's perspective onto the Impactful Parent stage to give you even more expertise and an added perspective on our parenting topics. So thank you for being here, Rodrigo. I am excited to talk about the conflicts of co-parenting with you. Rodrigo, both of us are divorced and both of us have our exes. I know that for me, I was married for 13 years and my divorce is not anywhere close to being anything normal or traditional or anything like that. And neither is our co parenting relationship. But tell me a little bit about where you and your co parents stand.
Both of my boys have different moms, and so I had different experiences with both of them. That's kind of one of the tenets of why I became a co-parenting coach and consultant. On one hand, Samuel's mom, her name is Maribel. We were pretty flexible with everything. We didn't really argue too much about clothes and all this. We both respected each other's needs and wants and so forth. If anything, she would ask me for, hey, Samuel's got school supplies. You want to go half on it? And most of the time, I would just pay for the whole thing, or at least half. New clothes, shoes, whatever the case may be, haircuts. I was always very much pro.
Okay, now
But that
you're
was
bragging, Rodrigo.
oh no. But see, that was one relationship. That was Samuel's relationship, and Samuel's mom's relationship. Now, when we're talking about Rodrigo's mom, it was completely different, especially at the beginning, but even towards the end. That one was always a tit for tat, super petty. Both parts at the beginning. I mean, I'm talking about like a shirt, and like I like certain types of clothes, right? And so I would go over there, and my son would go back home with his nice clothes on or whatever, and then hey, I need those clothes back and this and that. Or he would come to my house with school uniforms on. Hey, I need those uniforms back, and it was always a constant. Hey, he left his crayons. Hey, he left the book over there. Hey, can I get this back? And because she and I did not settle our emotional rifts, what we were going through, it carried out into that. And it really hampered the communication between she and I and made a difficult relationship even worse. And so when she and I really, when I started kind of going through my mental health journey and making sure that I was doing right, that's when I started to shift my perspective. And even though she didn't, I started to just kind of like let those things go. Just weren't worth it. And so I think it's really important for folks when they view this video and when they hear us, kind of talk about the exchanges and all this, that it is a growth. It does take time to get to that spot, but you really need to work on yourself first and then your relationship with your co-parent. Because if you don't do it that way, then the ones that really kind of suffer are the kids.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And like I said, my divorce is nothing traditional. We are completely like off the grid with how we do things, how we divided stuff, everything. And because of that, it is not equal. And I know that would drive a lot of people crazy. It did and drive me crazy and has and still does it from time to time. However, when you talk about that growth journey, I mean, immediately when I was going to get divorced, I had to start that growth journey. And I knew it. Otherwise, it was going to plague me like a cancer. I was going to get bitter inside. I was going to get ugly. And I didn't want that for myself. And I think that was the key. I didn't want that for myself. Like, I think sometimes we just react so often to our co-parent that we're not thinking about the person we actually want to be in that relationship anymore. We're just reactive because, well, they pull reaction out of us. I'll have to be honest with you. They know how to push our buttons like nobody else can in this world. So I had to really sit down and start working on that immediately. And I'm so grateful that I did. But it could go bad, and it does go bad for so many people. We even have a video to kind of give an example of what Rodrigo and I are talking about with this bickering and nitpicking. And it's just a really great example that Rodrigo found. Let's go ahead and play it.
Hey, where's your uniform at?
Mom said you need to buy our own uniforms for your house.
Go back in there and tell her you guys need to get your uniform on, please. I gotta go to work.
Mom locked the door.
Bye, Dad.
No. Today's your mama's day. Not my responsibility to make y'all lunch. That's hers. She didn't buy those shoes. Take them off. You're going out there barefoot today, son. All right? This is what it is. Here you go. There you go. She can get y'all your own backpack. It ain't my fault. She want to play. We gonna play. Okay? Don't look sad, son. If you're sad, be sad at your mama. Not my fault. Your mama started this. I'm just finishing it. Okay? Love you guys. Have a great day at school.
So yeah, so I know that that's a skit. I know that, it's kind of like they're playing around and so forth, right? But this is very true, very real. And you can even tell by the comments. If folks find the original video, you can tell by the comments that people play this out. They are actually out there having these type of arguments. And basically the video is detailing where the parents obviously have a rift. Obviously, there's kind of a discrepancy there between the parents, like saying, hey, who's got what? I want my back, this and that. And this happens so often in co-parenting relationships. I'm working with one client right now, just started, and that was one of the very first arguments. My daughter goes over there, and then he doesn't even bring the uniform back. And I get it. I'm not here to criticize people or judge people or anything like that. But they had this argument in front of their child, and all their child is seeing is mom and dad bickering. And how much is a uniform? I don't know now. I know when Samuel wore uniforms, they were roughly like $15 to $20. The whole little set that he had. And when we come down to think about it, we're arguing about $20. To some people, that's a lot, and I totally get that. I've been there. I've been there with $20 meant something, right? But $20 and expense of your child watching and getting further traumatized and seeing her parents argue, be petty, and not display good communication skills. I think the cost is way more in the long run to your child. And I think this video kind of shows, even though it's a little exaggerated, but still it's a skit, but this is a basis of reality of how some parents are pretty petty and still have not come to terms with whatever it is that they have to resort to exerting power on items like that. Is that the vibe you got, Christina, when you saw the video?
Oh, yeah, and I thought it was hilarious, and the reason it's funny is because it's rooted in some truth, right? Like, we all can relate to that as a divorcee and say, "Oh, yeah, that drives me crazy when I buy something and then I never get to see it again because it ends up at the ex's house and you don't go over there, and you can't it's hard to get the kids to rely on bringing stuff back, and then they don't I mean, it's common, right? And so I did love the video that it made of not funny situation kind of funny. But what shocked me the most was what you said, the comments in the from the original video. You go through the comments, and people, they're not really laughing, they're agreeing. They're like, "Yeah, that's me." And I'm like, "Oh, no, you're not. You're missing it. Like, it's a we're not supposed to be like that. It's supposed to be ironic." Like you're supposed to see the video and go, "Oh, wow, I guess that is ridiculous." Yeah, that was the sentiment that you're supposed to get out of it. But instead, there's just parents identifying with it and saying, "Yeah, they need to bring that, they have to bring it back. They have to. And so it's both. And one word that you said that really struck out to me was communication, right? Now, bad communication is a huge trigger of conflict, especially with co-parenting relationships. But you, as a mediator, deal with this all the time. And I'm curious, what kind of communication conflicts do you see a lot in your practice that you see parents just they can't get over it?
Oh yeah, there's a ton, and really it starts with emotion. When you have a breakup, there's a lot of emotions going on. What I see a lot of, and this is anecdotal, I don't have any scientific basis for it, but based on the clients that I've worked with, usually you'll have one person in the relationship that's on one emotional level, and you have another person in the relationship that's on another emotional level. What does that mean? That means one person may have already checked out of the relationship a long time ago. They're ready to move on. I'm talking about like they cut the reins. They're ready to go out there. They're ready to go date. They're excited. They've got plans to move on, break on. Meanwhile, the other co-parent is still reeling from the loss of their love. That's real emotion. That's not something you could just tell somebody, hey, you know what, get over it. Now you got to raise your kids and this and that. So a lot of times when there's separation, there's a lot of emotions. That was just one example. There's a lot of other examples where emotions are still going, they're still reeling, etc. So I think the most important thing that you can do is really get those lines of communication out and get those emotions out. One thing that I always tell my clients is that you have to vent in order to reinvent. So again, you have to vent in order to reinvent. What does that mean? That means that when we have these emotions inside of us, when we have these feelings and we feel we haven't been heard, many times in my mediation practice, maybe 2 or 3 meetings into it, I tell my clients, I go, what do you have that you want to say right now? You don't want to start with that. I don't start with that because usually both clients are not in that space, right? But once we get to a point where we can actually talk, where we're going to be listening, I kind of go into that space and I say, hey, look, this is not an apology session. This is not like, hey, this is just listen to me. That's it. Acknowledge it, and that's it. You don't have to agree. You don't have to, just hear me out so you can understand where I'm coming from when it comes to and I call it negotiations because that's really what it is. But these compromises that you have to make as co-parents. And most of the time, I've had tremendous success with folks that just express themselves. They get it out there, and the other parent acknowledges it and just says, I understand. And it gives those two people a good base to start off. It doesn't mean that like one person apologizes and accepts responsibility. I'm not here for that. I'm just here for you to listen so we both understand where we're coming from and we can find that solution that we're looking for. So in the end, when you establish that base of communication, then you can go forward with other things because then you're not holding on to, something else, some past grievance, some resentment. You know that you've been heard now. It's time to move on. It's time to think about your kids. Get past that. Not saying that you're going to get past the feelings. But as far as like in our negotiations, in our mediation, in our co-parenting coaching, it's time to move on in that sense. If there's still a further kind of feeling about that and this and that, I'm a big supporter of mental wellness, getting therapy, counseling, getting that successful toolkit so that you can successfully manage those feelings and over time overcome them and know, hey, what's hurting me? What can I do to do this? So you can be a better person, really. And then by being a better person, you can be a better co-parent and hopefully a better parent to your children.
Oh my goodness, you are so good. I hope people call you for your mediation services because you're so good. And also, I have a video. If you want to look up, I'll find out what episode it is, but it's how to apologize. And that is, I mean, most of us are not ready for that. But when you are ready, that's a great video. I take you through how to actually conduct an apology there. And I mentioned that because I mean, oh my gosh, this situation, it's emotionally charged in all levels, right? It doesn't matter if your ex has moved on and that's what has gotten you emotionally charged, or that they're still in it and that's what's gotten you emotionally charged. Everything about this is emotional, which brings up all of this. It brings out the bad sometimes in us, right? It just does. I was not the person that I wanted to be right after my divorce. Not even close. I'm ashamed of actually that woman that I was. And I have to claim her now because I had to grow away from that. But I can say I was not me, and that is not who I wanted to be. And I was ugly. I didn't like it. And it was because of all that emotion. So one of the things that this video kind of triggered in me was it's to notice those triggers. What are those patterns that make me turn to the dark side of the co-parent that I don't want to be? What made me do that? Is it jealousy? Is it that I'm just so emotionally charged that and for me, I was left. My husband left me, so I was very emotional. Is it just the feelings of loss? Like, what is it? I think it's really important for parents to figure out so that they don't end up like the video. What are your triggers in being a co-parent? And if sometimes those triggers are just your kids leaving the other stuff at the ex's house, or you feeling like you have to buy everything because your ex is not buying their half of whatever they need to buy. But one thing I found through my divorce process and my personal growth is, in order for me to get to a good place, I had to eat shit. And I'm not going to sugarcoat that. That's why I'm going to even say that word, because I had to accept that I was going to eat shit, and I was going to eat shit often, but I needed to eat shit so that I could be the better person in my eyes. And what it really needed to be is be the better person that I wanted to be, instead of that ugly Christina that I was when I first got divorced. And I had to literally make my way through the shit. I don't know how else to explain it, to elevate myself to become the better person I was. And I don't think that many parents want to eat shit. I think many parents, the majority of them, feel like they have the right for everything to be equal. I pay, you pay, halftime, blah, blah, blah. And it came to me very quickly that half of everything was not in the best interest of my children. And so I had to learn to eat shit. I hope that makes sense, Rodrigo.
That makes a lot of sense. And I appreciate you being real about it and not sugarcoating it, because it really is you having to wade through things that you're not going to be comfortable with. When I went through my separation, I wasn't comfortable with what was going on. And when I found out that Samuel was coming along, his mom and I, we got together pretty quick. And I realized I was going through, like, wow, what am I going to do here? This and that. And then we broke up. So like you said, now I'm going through this period where I didn't want, I wanted to go out. I wanted to do this, do that. But I did have to eat shit. I had to go through that hard period and really figure out, like, hey, what am I doing? What's going on with my life? Because if I didn't do that, I know that I wouldn't be a good person, and I wouldn't be a good dad. It's super hard to be a good dad if you're a bad person. It really is. You're gonna show those bad traits, that trauma, those experiences that you haven't worked out, that you haven't resolved. And so it's really important that we go through those journeys, that we do eat shit, as you succinctly put it, because if we don't, well, then we're missing part of that healing process. I have one client right now that I'm working with, and I want to tell her, I want to tell her, like, hey, slow down. It's a process, but you got to slow down. But it's not really my place to say that. I'm a mediator. I'm not here to, like, I hate to say not to be friends. We end up becoming friendly most of the time, right? With the folks that I work with. But at the same time, I have to know, like, hey, I can't be protecting every single person. And if this person chooses to do what they're doing, it's on them. Now if they ask me, then yeah, I'll probably provide some advice and go like, hey, slow down a bit. Like, hey, you gotta heal. Basically, what I'm trying to say is like this person hasn't healed, or at least my perception is that they haven't healed. Now, I'm not a licensed professional counselor, so I can't make those assessments and those judgments, right? But I've been through my own healing journey. I've been through my own mental wellness journey that I can recognize that. I can recognize when somebody hasn't healed. They're putting that facade, right? They're like, oh man, I'm tough and I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that, and I don't give a shit, and we're gonna do this, and I'm living my best life, but they haven't healed. And when you walk around with that pain, when you walk around with that trauma and that healing hasn't happened, it's bound to come up. It's bound to pop up somewhere where you least expect it and probably where you don't want it to pop up. So I'm glad that you put it that way, Christina. It totally makes sense. And I think folks need to understand that that is part of the process. If you are going through a separation, if you are going through, this co-parenting journey and it's hard, that's kind of part of the process. But you got to start. But the first thing is recognizing that. If you recognize that, then you can start kind of making those inroads towards healing, and then start the communication path, and then start becoming better co-parents for the sake of your kids.
And power dynamics, control issues. These are the other things I see causing these kinds of conflicts, like the video. It's that control, wanting to have control. So yes, I'm gonna no, those are the ones that I bought from my house. You can't take that over there. So I'm curious, with your practice, what kind of power struggles do you see most often with co-parents, and how do you resolve those?
Many times I see there's an income disparity, right? Where one parent is making more money than the other. And it goes both ways. There's sometimes I've had clients where, one parent, the mom has a great job and the dad doesn't. But the dad has the child support he has to pay through and this and that. And so there is kind of a power dynamic there. And so the guy's thinking like, oh man, I barely make this much, and she makes this much, this and that, right? But it's an obligation, and so what I try to help out with clients is making them understand like, hey, the harder you make it for your other parent, the harder it becomes for their relationship with their kids as well. That particular case, it was a co-parenting coaching. I helped them out. It worked great. But at the very beginning, especially, she was really hammering him, really getting on him like, hey, you need to do this and you need to do that. And he was struggling. He was barely afloat, barely breathing per se. And then he was in a relationship, and the whole time he was hiding it, because she had a problem with that and this and that. Eventually we got to the point where we disclosed everything. They both shared what they were going through and so forth. And when he disclosed that he was in a relationship, it suddenly changed. She had this power dynamic where like, hey, I'm making more money than him, this and that. But now she's like, oh snap, he's in a relationship, I'm not. Did he already move on? It just completely, and he had done a really good job of changing that. So that was kind of a shift in the power, in the sense of like, she felt she had control over things, but all of a sudden she felt like she didn't have control. And so when he shared that, they opened up, she realized like, okay, all right. And she became a lot, I would characterize it as softer, and so forth. But at the end, she began to empathize, and she began to understand that. And, she shared with me later on that like, I've been interested in this guy, but I was so wrapped up in what's going on here that I didn't even pay attention to that guy. I didn't want to go out and this and that. And I told her like, you're entitled to your happiness. I don't know, nobody's bound to their kids' relationship. You have kids, I hear this all the time too, talking about power dynamics, that folks say like, I live for my kids, and I do everything for my kids. And that's a great sentiment, but honestly, that's not good. That's not what you should do, because eventually your kids move on and then you're going to be left with nothing. When you're a happy person, you're going to be a happy parent. And so I think it's really important that you do that. And you can't really be happy if you're over here exerting a power dynamic with somebody, because that means that you're exerting, an influence, and usually it's a negative influence. So those are the kind of power dynamics that I've seen. Income. I've also seen relationship power dynamics where the children, one child likes the other parent more than the other, or things of that nature, or dynamics that involve relationships outside. And so it's really, really important to understand that, but it's also important to recognize that. And that, if you want to have a successful co-parenting relationship, that, power dynamics and understanding the hierarchies and all this other stuff really needs to go out the door. You really don't have room for that. You have room for compassion, compromise, and character, making sure that we, act in a way that our kids are going to be proud of. So I think it's super important that we recognize that.
But Rodrigo, that's so hard. That's so hard. You make it sound so easy. Oh, there's no room for that. Oh my gosh, it's all emotional charge, right? So the power dynamic and letting that go. I mean, I empathize with everybody out there. That is tough. It's hard to eat shit. It totally is. And that's one of the areas I could especially empathize with the money power dynamic that you're talking about, because my ex-husband is exponentially richer than me. And so because of that, I knew when we got our divorce that he was always going to have more, be able to give our kids more, do more with them. And I was immediately knew that I was going to get triggered by that. So going back to trying to identify what triggers us to get into the bad version of us in divorce. And I knew that was one of them for me, that it was that power dynamic of him having so much more that I could never get that level of income. It hurt my soul inside to know I couldn't go on these lavish vacations and take my kids and have those experiences with my children the way he could. And I hate to say it like that, but it is true. I was freaking jealous, downright jealous.
But didn't you? I mean, I don't want to disclose anything personal, but didn't you make that kind of a caveat that you take a trip every year?
I did. Well, actually, that was his choice. Yeah. So, like I said, my divorce is completely non-traditional. And one of the things that my ex-husband initiated in our divorce agreement was that we did a once a year vacation, all 6 of us. We have 4 children together because I was married for 13 years, and just the 2 parents. It's even written in the divorce agreement, no spouses, no boyfriends, no girlfriends, no nothing, like just the 6 of us. And I really thought that was great because it did help me. He doesn't know that, but he did it because he thought it would be nice for our young children at the time, who were babies, to have their parents 1 week a year together. I commend him for that. For me, it was great because it took off a little bit of that pressure of, what are they doing? I'm missing out. That big FOMO I was having of, I can't do that with my kids the way he can. At least this one vacation a year, I got to be with them and I got to experience that with them. And we're still doing it to this day. I leave next week to this vacation with him. And so, and I still look forward to it, but it was something that I had to really identify and work on from the beginning, to say, it's okay that he can go and do all of that. And I can figure out special moments in a different way. But that was hard. I mean, it really was difficult to get over that power dynamic. And it still bothers me to this day, if I'm honest with myself. On occasion, it still creeps up. And I still work on that. I mean, I want to buy my kids the brand new shiny car the way that he can, or say I paid for their college the way he can, but I can't. So I let him do that, and that's okay. And he gets to have that credit, and you know what? He deserves it. He was able to do it, I guess.
But I think that's part of the initial conversation, whether you came up with that or he came up with that. I think that's great communication on both of y'all's parts. That, like, hey, we should do this for our kids. And I'm not gonna speak for you as to the trips that y'all have taken, but I have to think that these trips have been beneficial to your kids. That they've grown up, going to different places around the world, experiencing things, but also with both of y'all. And I'm pretty sure it was hard at the beginning, especially, but I assume now that there's like a level of communication that's pretty nice, pretty gentle, pretty, you know, at the very least cordial. Is that okay to describe that communication while y'all are on the trips?
Absolutely. But I'm 10 years out from my divorce, I would say.
What?
And so I think that's important to note. Like, hey,
Yeah.
it's again, going back to process, like it wasn't always like that 10 years later. And these vacations were not always easy. They were, in fact, they were extremely difficult. I would run and hide all by myself and cry in the middle of vacations sometimes. And nobody knows that. I think that's the first time I've ever even said that out loud because I didn't want anyone to know. I didn't want certainly my ex-husband to know that I would, in the middle of the night, I'll go outside and cry by myself. For sure, my kids, no way. There's no way I don't want them to know that I was sad at all during those vacations. But man, they were great, and it was a great idea. There's many, many, many exponential more benefits from that than from my ex-husband and I getting along, having 1 week with our kids alone, having that experience with them than it is any negative. But you do eat a lot of shit on those vacations too.
Well, and I think that's a testament to what we've been talking about, right? It's a growth, it's a process. It's not something that happens overnight, especially if uh, um, there's an emotional disconnect there. We're both, y'all are on different levels and this and that. But it's taking time, and now you're to a place where, hey, you know what? I'm comfortable even admitting something that I haven't admitted ever before. That it was tough at the beginning, but now you have these memorable trips. You're going on another trip pretty soon. I think this is kind of a great example that parents can really look up to and say, like, you know what? I'm going through a really tough process right now, and it doesn't look good. But in the long term, if I follow these steps, if I just take the time to really process and heal, that I can get to a stage where I'm like Christina, and I can take trips and be around the person and not have a blowout or so. So
Yeah.
that's great. I think that's great, Christina. Certainly, you've reached a level that's even higher than I've reached, because I know that I would never take a trip with one of them, and the other one, I don't think she would want to take a trip with me anyway. So
Yes.
it's
Oh,
all
when
good,
I tell people about it, they're always like, what? Yeah.
But it does definitely take a lot of personal resolve and healing that you've done throughout it, right? It's we don't operate in a vacuum where like one day it just happens. It's a journey, it's a process, and it sounds like you've been able to manage that process now, and I commend you for that. That's amazing.
Thank you. And that's a one trigger. Like I said, that power dynamic is only one trigger. You got to identify all these triggers that make you go into that dark place. As soon as my ex, you mentioned, have a relationship, that is a trigger for nearly everybody. I don't know how you felt about it when your exes, you know, decided to finally date or moved on. But oh my goodness, for me, it was, of course, I was left. So it's a little bit different of a situation than being on the other side of that, but huge trigger. And because of that, then all the emotions come up, they start to boil. And all of a sudden, here I am saying, I paid for that. Bring it back over to my house. You start going to that unrational bickering again. And so to identify that these are your triggers. Another trigger, actually, and then I think about it, is having unrealistic expectations of your ex. And this goes both ways when they have unrealistic expectations of you and you have unrealistic expectations of them. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because as I'm thinking about the bad Christina inside, when I was in the bickering mode, like the video, and saying half, half, everything equal, that was so much of an unrealistic expectation I had on my ex-husband. He was never that dad. Even when we were married, he was never taking care of the kids half of the time. No way. Why would it be that as soon as I got a divorce, I would think that now you are responsible for the kids half of the time? Take them away. Good luck. And then expect him to be able to do it well, remember everything, be the parent I want him to be. Those are unrealistic expectations that came out of ugly triggering Christina, that I think a lot of people don't, especially women, we put on our exes. And I think on the other hand, I'm sure you have examples of how men often do the same type of thing with the woman. And I just want to say, hey, I'm saying it. I'm bringing that out loud. Why would we expect that of our ex? And we're just setting them up for failure. And when we set them up for failure, not only are they going to get disappointed, it's going to cause an argument. It's going to trigger us some more. It's not good for our kids. Rodrigo, stupid. Why are we doing that?
I think it boils down to us being insecure. And so what we do is we end up exerting that insecurity onto somebody else, hoping that they also feel insecure. So in other words, like when you were talking about, hey, I'm a homemaker, I take care of the kids and this and that. You're really good at that. You probably, and you are, but you probably think like, hey, that's my strong suit, right? Maybe I don't make as much money as he does, but I definitely can take care of the kids. So what do? You end up exerting those same standards that you have for yourself onto him, knowing that he doesn't have those standards, knowing that he's going to fall short, but it makes you feel better in a certain type of way because you can criticize him for that, right? You can't criticize him for the lack of money he's making. I'm sure he's paying his child support. He's taking care of his kids and so forth. You can't, maybe I don't know, maybe he's good at something else. You don't want to criticize him for that, but you'll definitely pick on what he's not good at, right? And that your example right there is definitely not isolated. There are tons of relationships and co-parenting journeys that I've worked with definitely fall in that paradigm where like the mom has been taking care of a lot of things and taking the kids to school and this and that, and dad's been going to work, and occasionally he dabbles here and there. Now all of a sudden, he's supposed to pick up the kids and drop them off at school, and she's mad because they're like 10 minutes late and this and that, da da da. And I have to remind them, I was like, yeah, he's got to take time to do that. You've been doing this now for 8 years, right? I'm just throwing a number out. You've been doing this now for 8 years. You have it down packed. He's been doing this now for 8 weeks. He's still learning. He's still growing. That same grace, though, needs to be extended to the other party as well. I've had folks, tell me, men who tell me like, oh yeah, she doesn't do this and she doesn't do that, and mom lets their daughter have an Instagram account, and then and I say no. I said, okay, understood. Y'all haven't compromised on that. So for now, she has an Instagram account. Now if she's gonna police it, she told you that she's gonna police it and make sure she does. Then what else do you want? Well, no, I don't have an Instagram account. I go, understood. But that doesn't mean that in her house is going to be a different set of rules. Unless y'all can compromise on that, you're just going to have to deal with that. He was trying to apply his standards where he doesn't have a social media life to their daughter, but also by de facto to her, because she did have a social media life. And he was like, oh no, this and that, blah, blah, blah. Again, implementing those standards on somebody else is not, going to work, because they have different standards. They have different ways. The only time I agree with that is like in safety, when in security, I get that, but even that can be misconstrued. I've had parents, kind of criticize the partner of their other co-parent and say like, oh, well, this person this and this person that, and what kind of he works at that. Oh, come on, what kind of job is that? This trying to basically diminish that person. And I always tell parents like, hey, you trusted this person to have a daughter with you, or son or whatnot. Now all of a sudden you don't trust them to like have another partner. it's a lot of feelings, a lot of emotions, a lot of things that got to get worked through. But definitely, I feel that when it comes to those kind of dynamics, that we need to be cognizant of what we're saying and what we're doing, because our standards does not apply to everybody, and we got to be careful with that, because that is kind of a signal that maybe we need a little bit more healing to do. And then one last thing, Christina, you mentioned triggers. When I went through my mental health journey, I realized what my triggers were, and I figured them out, and I said, okay, whenever this happens, this is what I'm going to do. Whenever this happens, this is what I'm going to do. I have a toolkit, and I use my toolkit whenever something happens that I need to process. And I think that's super, super important that people realize what their triggers are and what to do about those triggers when they happen. Too many times we don't even identify the triggers, or we know what the triggers are, but we don't do anything about it, or we have a terrible response towards it. One of those things that I always encourage people to do when it goes to counseling and therapy is developing a toolbox to know how to handle those triggers. So for example, and I'll end right here, one trigger for me, right, was communication. Like any type of communication that wasn't preceded with kindness. I always felt like that was a trigger. It took me back to a moment back when I was younger, a younger dad, and that just brought a lot of pain. So now, yeah, and it doesn't happen now, but a few years ago when I was still in my co-parenting journey with Rodrigo's mom, if ever there was a text that started off with a command or something like that, I would just ignore it, and I would type back, "Hey, can you rephrase that?" And I know it sounds stupid. I know, but I explained it one time, and I just said like, "Hey, look, when you talk like this to me, this is what's going to happen to this and that." So when I just type back to you and say, "Can you rephrase that for me, please?" I'm asking for some kindness. I'm asking for some grace. If you're not there, then don't even respond to it. But if we're here to talk about my son and this and that, I want to have kind communication. It didn't work. It didn't.
Oh no.
It didn't work.
At least you
But
tried, though. You did try to communicate with
I
her.
did, exactly. I remained level-headed about it, and there were times when it worked. I mean, it happened here and there, but it didn't work. But I knew I was setting the terms of like, hey, our communication, what needs to happen, and that's what happened. And now I feel comfortable that hey, every time I communicated, I did it in a place that was in a good spot. I was thinking about my son, and I was only thinking about good, positive, even kind communication. I wasn't trying to be petty or anything like that. So if anything I got out of that was it helped me refocus myself as well and make sure that I was at a good state, that I didn't respond unkindly, or that I didn't respond with my first reaction, with my trigger reaction, right? Like, responding like hey, what the fuck kind of text is this? Or something like that, No, chill. Hey, let's rephrase it. If you're not cool with it, then don't rephrase it. I just won't respond to it.
I am so grateful that you talk about your mental health journey so candidly, because more men need to do that. Like there's
Yes.
a stigma on it, and I don't like that. And I mean, I just see the man you are today, and I mean, I'm proud of you, and I don't even know you for, but the last 4 years or so. I mean, I can't even imagine the Rodrigo, that dark Rodrigo that I talked, like you wouldn't recognize the dark Christina either. But I see this man in front of me and I'm like, yes, yes. More men need to do it. And through my journey, when I got divorced, I do want to mention that legally, the divorce is 50-50. Through that process of me going through my healing and him growing and us just figuring our shit out, it's not 50-50 anymore. So, and I want to just put that out there so that people can say it's okay that things aren't 50-50 anymore. We found our balance. And if you can get past all these triggers that you're going to have and eventually grow into it, to this day, we're not 50-50, and it works great for our family. I have the kids like 90% of the time. Like literally, I'm like just my primary caregiver. And I've decided to just lean into that role he has decided to lean into what he does best, being the provider. So he pays for most of the kids' stuff. I mean, not, I know most, I'm going to say all. He is an amazing provider, and I'm an amazing caregiver. We decided to finally let go of that petty difference and actually lean into our strengths. And it has been great for our children. Do we still have differences? Yeah, we do. Do we still argue and have all like, yes, but we try to do it behind the curtain, you know? And I just wanted to mention that so parents know that it's okay not to be 50-50. Do whatever is best for your family. And if that's you taking the kids 90% of the time, maybe you're just that good of a parent that they need to be with you 90% of the time. How great is that? It's not necessarily a bad thing, okay? So, lean in. It's okay. I just wanted to say that because it took me a while to get there, but I'm really happy that I did.
Yeah. I gotta applaud that, Christina, because as I'm an equity-based mediator. The mediation, the training that I received was from Manuso's Mediation Training Academy in Houston, Texas, and we were specifically trained not to do 50-50. Only do 50-50 if that's what makes sense, but more equity-based. Where, hey, what are we trying to really get to, and who's better at what? What's really important to you? And so sometimes the agreements that I make as a mediator are not 50-50. They're 70-30, or they're, this and that. But that's what works in that case. And I apply that same philosophy into my co-parenting consultancy, because it's the same thing. I mean, what you just said right now is 100% spot on. And I wish more parents, co-parents, would really respond positively to that and understand, like, hey, maybe I'm better at this. Maybe I'm the better planner, and this other person is the better provider, or this other person is the better disciplinarian, even, the better, whatever the roles are, whatever y'all agreed to. It doesn't always have to be 50-50. And I'm glad that you've reached that stage, but I'm also glad that you can use that as an example of what good parenting looks like.
And I want to end with talking a little bit about you and mediation, because as people are listening to this, if they're identifying with what we're saying in that video, they might need mediation. I don't think people really understand what mediation is and what they get out of it. Like, what is that in comparison to, like, I'm going to take you to court so that we can make things 50-50. Like, what is mediation? Can you tell me a little bit about that for the audience? And like, what do you do? What do you get out of it? Why should I go?
Yeah, no, mediation is basically an ADR, an alternative dispute resolution, where parties meet together and try to come up with the best agreement for them. Where lawyers are really advocating for their party, right? They're trying to get everything that they can, what they feel their party needs, and so forth. Mediators like myself, we really advocate for the best solution for both parties. We don't advocate for either one. What we're trying to do is find the solution that already exists within both parties.
And I'm going to clarify something while you're talking about this. So with you're going to a lawyer, you have a lawyer and he has a lawyer. But with mediation, you have one person representing both.
Yeah. It can be two mediators as well. But typically, like, for example, the way I work with, I only do it's only me mediating. I'm not trying to mediate with another mediator or anything like that. But yes, it's one mediator listening to the parties involved and really trying to get the solution from those parties. I don't want to. Now, there is another form of ADR called arbitration, where both parties talk to a mediator, arbitrator, really, like myself. They give the facts, they say this and that, and then I decide what the best solution is. But I don't particularly agree with that type of ADR. I'm more of a mediator, where I find out what people's needs are, what their wants are, what's necessary, their requirements, but also delve a little bit into the feelings behind that and trying to figure out what's really the trigger in there. I would say about 90% of my cases are really emotionally driven, whether it's child custody, civil cases, divorce, elder care, etc. It really is different when you're looking for a solution that benefits everybody, not just a solution for one person. Mediation works in pretty much any type of case. I don't do heavy asset mediation. with divorces and so forth. I just feel like those are much more better suited for somebody like a lawyer that does discovery, that goes through the proper procedures of finding all the assets. So, for example, like mutual funds and, you know, big real estate stuff like that. I try to stay away from it just because A, I don't have much experience in it, but also B, I feel like those are the types that maybe does need a little bit more peering into. I've had examples for me personally where I find out that the party has more assets than they're claiming. And I basically have to recuse myself. I say, like, hey, I can no longer fairly mediate this because there's something that I know that I can't express, and I say, hey, you need to litigate this. But mediation for smaller cases, medium cases like divorce, child custody, elder care, things of that nature, I've done. And it's really, I feel, a great way to resolve disputes if you're having trouble with a litigation or if you haven't even started litigation. I really recommend folks go through that first because you can really save not only a lot of time, but a lot of money as well going through mediation and going through an equity-based solution that really takes into effect everybody's real needs and real necessities from dispute that they're having. So that's the mediation that I do, the type of work that I've done, and I'm really happy with it. I really use that as well as the basis of my co-parenting, coaching, and consultancy. I niched down even further into that because I was a mediator and because I have that experience as a co-parent on both spectrums, both on a very positive relationship that I had with Samuel's mom, Maribel, and with a not so positive relationship with Rodrigo's mom. And so using that experience as a co-parent, somebody that, like myself, that I'm BIPOC and can represent, Black and brown communities, I really try to help parents in those communities in mediation and co-parenting to really kind of establish like a trust and say, hey, you know what, you're going through this. I'm someone that maybe you can trust and that we can work on this together. I may have the same background that you do, and I understand where you're coming from because I've been there myself. So yeah, that's a little bit about mediation and also the co-parenting coaching that I do.
And you can do mediation anytime. So, like, let's say me and my ex-husband, we've been divorced almost 10 years now, but if we had an argument, we can still go to a mediator, correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you can go to a mediator for really anything that you feel like needs to be resolved. It could be something small, something big, doesn't really matter, and it also could be an addition to an agreement you already have. Sometimes there's been parents, I've had this maybe twice, I think, maybe three times, where they have a divorce decree, but something has changed, but they don't want to go through the entire divorce decree and change this and change that. So what they'll do is they'll do an addendum to it and add the MAS to it. I'm sorry, the mediation agreement settlement. That's the standard document that we have. They'll add that on, tack it on. We'll file it with the county where the decree was done, and that's it. It's just like a legal form. It's just like a legal document. It gets tacked on, and it adds to the decree. In that case, it was just a revision of the visitation rights. Their visitation rights were never discussed past 100 miles, and so when one parent moved, they were going to have to file a whole nother decree and do this and that. I said, no, we can mediate that. We can mediate that. Let's agree to the terms and this and that. It was really simple. Both the parents were very happy. They just wanted to lock it down. They wanted to make sure they had something to go on. And in fact, that's a great ending right there. That was one of the person's triggers. I can't remember if it was her or him, but one of them had a trigger that if things weren't like, detailed and spelled out, that it would cause chaos and confusion with them and their co-parenting partner. And they had examples of that. So he I can't remember which one it was, but they both recognized the need to do that they needed to have everything in paper. That way, if there ever was a disagreement, they could just say, hey, look, you know what? Let's just go back to the decree. That's kind of how they settled their disagreements or argument. So a full circle moment there, because that was one way that they discovered their triggers so that they can avoid all that pettiness and tit for tat that some parents do, like in that video. Even though it was a skit, we know it's real because when you read the comments, you see all the people that are agreeing with it and saying that, like, you know what, I need that shirt back.
Yep.
Crazy.
Bring it back to my house. That belongs here. I paid for it.
I want those shoes clean.
Mm-hmm. In Colorado, we get a lot of, I bought all the ski gear. No, you can't take them with it because it's really expensive to buy ski gear.
That's expensive. Yeah.
So they're like, no, you can't take it over to his house and leave it over there or whatever that looks like,
Yeah.
No, it's real. They're real arguments. Well, thank you, Rodrigo, for joining me today. That was an awesome conversation. I just wanted to say, you guys, check out those triggers, find them. If you feel a ton of emotion coming out from your body, that's probably a trigger. Like, start looking for it and digging down. Check out your mental health journey. There's no shame in it. It will make you the best person, the best version of yourself that you can be and want to be. So go that direction. And don't forget to come back next week when Rodrigo and I will be back. Start your Impactful Parent journey by downloading the Impactful Parent app. The Impactful Parent app is free to carry help, tips, and parenting resources right in your pocket. Download the app today. You got nothing to lose. It's a free download. So go to theimpactfulparent.com or your phone's app store and discover how you can step up your parenting game and become a more impactful parent. And if you would like to reach out to Rodrigo Bravo for his co-parenting mediation and coaching services, you can email him at rodrigobravo.jr@gmail.com. Remember that this episode is just a small part of what the Impactful Parent offers. Also available are online courses, parent support groups, coaching services, and the Impactful Parent app. Find out more at theimpactfulparent.com. But until next time, you got this. I'm just here to help.